thank you for joining us today. It's been about just over a month since we had our last one. And obviously things have changed, etc. So it'd be really good to kind of get a check-in from where you're all at. So if you want to put a temperature check on the chat, that would be fab. I must admit, I feel quite like about 7 out of 10 today. I feel quite bubbly. I haven't been feeling that great, but 7 out of 10 feels like an amazing score to have. But it would be really good to know how you all are doing, because let's face it, it's been really uncertain. And we don't know whether we're coming and going, and some parts are locked down and some parts aren't. And yeah, I don't know about you, but it's really messing with my head for sure. So also, I would really appreciate it if it's okay to put yourself on mute, just so that we would be able to have a chat with our speaker today, who I'll introduce you to in a bit. But just as, you know, before, I don't know if some of you are quite new to joining this, but basically it's a space, it's a safe space for people to be able to share what their experiences are and how they've come to be who they are today. But of course, with all of that, there is a trigger warning. You know, I cannot stress this enough. Please, please, please take care of yourself. If at any point you feel like, do you know what, I can't listen to any more of this or anything like that, you can always go out. I will look to lock the room about 15 to 20 minutes, but to be honest, we have got waiting rooms, so I can actually block people at that. So no one who's not supposed to be in is not going to be in, if you see what I mean. If at any point, like I said, you need to drop out, please do. There's loads of support agencies on our website, Time to Change. You can just Google Time to Change and just put support services and they will come up, or you can just Google Mind Info Line. But equally, if you have an employee assistance program, then I cannot stress this enough. Please, please, please do kind of check out what they offer. Usually they offer a whole load more than counselling, and you'll be really surprised by the menu of support that they do. So do check in with that. Just want to say a massive hello. I'm going to check in on the chat. Loads of people are feeling 6 to 7, so that's really good. That's a positive thing. Boss is saying, boss, that is Drew Berry, just in case you're wondering. 7, not thrilled that London is moving up a tier, but you never know. You never know. And Ian is about 25, I think, so that's excellent. The recording will be on audio, which means you won't see his fingers going up. So just so that you know, he's 25 out of 10 today. But yeah, just want to say hello, Charlotte. Thank you so much for joining us. So Charlotte, or Charlie, yeah, is from Reflex Vehicle Hire. She's championed that. She's basically been the driver of the pledge process and everything that's gone in it. But let's be honest, it wasn't just a professional decision for you, was it, Charlie? No. It was a whole load of stuff that you'd experienced, and it was your lived experience that really made you so dedicated driving you. So just want to hand it over. It'd be really good to know, you know, what was it that drove you to pushing the pledge and doing everything that you do for your organisation?
Okay, so thank you. So obviously I've never done anything like this before, so I might be a bit jittery, so just bear with. But yeah, so obviously, as Rena said, my name's Charlie, I'm 31, I work at Reflex Vehicle Hire. I've been there for, I think, 6 years now. Obviously, I was introduced to Rena back in, I think, March, was it, when obviously I got the go-ahead for the pledge within the company. So I'm just going to obviously just go through my experiences really with you. I don't want to upset anybody or anything like that. Right, so here we go. So obviously growing up, I had quite a happy childhood. There was me, my mum, my dad, and I've got 2 older brothers. With all of that, we did experience quite a lot of trauma and pain. By the age of 16, I lost my dad, my uncle and 2 aunties, and all of them I lost to suicide. My uncle being the first when I was aged just 5 years old. This was the beginning of it all really for us. My dad at the time, they were really close, and people often thought they were twins. And my dad couldn't really come to terms why his brother had chose that path rather than confiding in him. He really struggled to understand that. So for us as children, we then had to watch my dad go through depression quite excessively, shall we say. I think towards the end of my dad's life, he was slowly coming out of it, but I think that's always the worst part. But he chose to drink a lot, so on medication for his depression and everything, and then mixed with alcohol. It was never a very good mix, really. For about 3-4 years, we as a family had to witness my dad attempt suicide several times, to be fair. It was quite traumatic. And being so young, it was difficult to try and understand why he wanted to leave us. Do you know, like, why weren't we enough for him to get him through this? Do you know, it was really hard to kind of understand that. And the difficult thing is always the next day after we'd witnessed my dad to try and take his own life, it was like he was my dad, and he was even worse than he probably was the day before, because he was so emotional. He couldn't say sorry enough. He'd almost try and buy our love because he didn't know how to fix the pain that he was probably causing us as a family. But it was quite a tough experience. And then on the 28th of April 1999, it was my cousin's birthday. My mum picked me up from school. We went round my cousins, had presents, cake, all of that shebang. My dad was a window fitter. He actually there's a really big conservatory at the Leicester Royal Infirmary. I'm not sure whether you've seen it. It's the biggest conservatory in the UK. Well, it was. I don't know if that's still correct. But he built that. So he was always really proud of his work. But he'd recently built a conservatory on my grandma and granddad's house. And I wanted to go and see it. My mum kept saying no, but I got my own way. We went. While we was there, I actually spoke to my dad on the phone. He sounded fine. He said he was still at work. I knew he wasn't. And I knew that he was really down the pub. He told us that we needed to get home, get dinner on. So we said goodbye, love you, all of that. About an hour later, we returned home. My mum's gone in the kitchen and I've gone upstairs. I've walked past my dad on the landing. I've gone into my bedroom, said hello. I'm having a chat with him while I'm in my bedroom, and there's no reply. I thought, what's a bit strange? So I've turned around, walked into the hallway, and there my dad was. And my dad had hung himself. Sorry, I don't know why I'm getting emotional. I just screamed for my mum, because just to stand and look at him was awful. And she came running up them stairs, and even before she got to us, my mum knew. She just knew what had happened. And she just pushed me into my bedroom and told me that everything was going to be okay. She took me downstairs, she covered my face, and she rang my grandparents, and she rang an ambulance, and told me to stay in the living room, where I did stay. My mum then obviously had to go up and get my dad down. She actually managed to get my dad's pulse back, but during the trip from the house to the hospital, the paramedics just couldn't do anything for him. But yeah, during that time when my mum was upstairs, my brother come in, but my mum had locked the door, and he's banging on the door trying to get in. And even my brother, I think all of it was just, we were kind of just waiting for that day where he would be successful. Do you know what I mean? I know that sounds awful, but because we'd experienced these attempts so often, it was almost like, when's it going to happen? But I had to explain to my eldest brother what had happened. He was trying to go upstairs and I was pulling him not to. Anyway, he went in the ambulance with my mum to the hospital, and I had to go with my grandparents to find my other brother, and he was extremely close with my dad. We used to call him my dad's workmate. So having to sit, I was 9 years old at this point, having to sit and tell him basically that potentially our dad had died was a nightmare, to be honest. But we all went back to the house, and my mum come back and had to tell us that, you know, they couldn't do anything for him. And it was a really hard day, and that day probably lingers with me so much. But because I'd gone to my grandparents, I kind of always had a lot of blame on myself, because for me, I used to think, well, if we hadn't gone to my grandparents, we would have been home in time. But in realisation, as I've just said, if it wasn't that day, it probably would have been another day. And I know that's a really, really shit way to look at it, but it was the only way that I could try and not have all this weight on my shoulders, if that makes sense. Because yeah, I just used to beat myself up a lot about it, and I just couldn't come to terms why we weren't enough for him. By the ages of, I think, 14 and 16 was when I lost both of my other aunties. One of them didn't really like her very much, wasn't a very nice person, but she was my dad's sister, so we always had to be polite and so on and so forth. Whereas my other auntie, she was just she was just the next level. She was amazing, to be honest. She was just absolutely nutty. I used to call her Tina Turner. But she was, yeah, she used to take me shopping and shoplift while I was with her, thinking it was the normal thing to do. And my mum and dad used to go absolutely crazy, like, what the hell are you doing? She's like, it's okay, she's got chocolates. And I'm like, didn't know what was happening, thinking, have I just done something illegal? But she was a next level, really. But yeah, so it was, all in all, my dad had quite a big family. He had half brothers and sisters and step brothers and sisters, but there was 4 that had the same mum and dad, and those 4 are the ones that all took their own lives, which is madness, really. But growing up, it had a massive weight on my shoulders, really. And from the ages of 16 to 19, I would say, I hated my dad. I hated him. I hated him for leaving us. I hated him for the pain that I used to feel. I hated him because people used to make me feel ashamed. They judged me. I was the girl at school whose dad had killed himself, and I just hated him for that, like, because he just put so much pain around my life, and I didn't know how to get out of it. And also both my brothers were just little fuckers, and they were horrible to my mum because we were all like, they were teenagers, and that's quite normal. But I just used to think if my dad was here, this wouldn't happen, and it probably would have all been going on because teenagers are teenagers. But I kind of just resented them because, you know, they just, for me, my mum's like my hero. Like, there's not one person that walks this planet that would have gone through everything my mum has gone through and still come out the other side. Like, she is my absolute hero. And, you know, for anybody to cause ill health or anything, well, not ill health, like to cause bad mouths to my mum or anything like that, it gets my back up massively, because to me, she has put us where we are today. Like, without her, like, we would be nothing, really, nothing at all. And she's just been so amazing, really. But the whole thing with the whole suicide and stuff like that, yeah, as life went on, I went through kind of every emotion going. I was sad, I felt hopelessness, hard done to, I felt numb, I was selfish sometimes, I was angry, all these different things, really. And when I got to the age of 23, at that point I'd seen roughly about 14 different counsellors, because I wanted to get help. I didn't want to feel the way that I was feeling. My brothers, not so much. They just thought it was, they weren't bothered. Whereas I wanted to not feel the way I was feeling anymore. I mean, you know, no disrespect to the NHS, but all these counsellors I'd seen through being referred from GPs and stuff, but not one of them helped me. I actually went to one, and she told me, this is hands down the truth, she told me my life was too messed up to help me. And that, I think I was about 19 at that point, and I remember just leaving thinking, I'm just unfixable. Like, there's nothing, like, this is just going to be me now forever. So I drank a lot, I took a lot of drugs, I smoked weed literally from morning to night, just to try and numb myself, I suppose. And it wasn't until probably years later on, really, that you look back and think that that really wasn't the answer, but to me at the time it was. But really, especially smoking weed, all it does is, it's a depressant, really, isn't it? I suppose it's more, it's not fixing the problem, it's just clouding it. So it wasn't, yeah, it didn't help me. But yeah, I kind of just had a bit of a self-pity, and I thought, I can't do this. And I remember sitting on my bed one night, and I just didn't want to feel the way I was feeling anymore. I used to get that frustrated and frantic that I'd like claw my nails into my face. I'd punch my face like over and over and over, or I'd claw my arms and my stomach, and because I just wanted, it's almost like I felt that suffocated that I just needed to release something. Do you know what I mean? It was just, I didn't know which way to go or what to do to try and take the pain away. There was nothing I was doing that was resolving that for me. And so in the end, yeah, I sat there on my bed sobbing, pissed out my head on vodka, and I could have probably quite easily ended my life that night, but it was like a light bulb had gone off in my head, and this split second I thought, this is exactly how my dad felt. And I know it sounds crazy, but I kind of will always be thankful for that moment, because it put everything into perspective for me, and everything. And I don't blame my dad. I don't blame him at all. I'm sad that he felt that was his only option, but I get it. I get it. Nothing will take the pain away from not having him here, but that goes for any kind of death. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't have to be suicide. That can be any kind of death. You have that, that lingering for somebody. You just want that person near you, and you can't have them. They're gone. But it was at that point, my mum was the only person at that time that I wanted anywhere near me. I'd lost my job. I'd lost my relationship that I'd been in for 4.5 years. Everything kind of just shattered around me. And she literally picked me up and put me in the car and drove me to the GP. And at this point, because my dad had been on medication, I was so anti-medication, because I thought, well, if it can't save my dad, it's not going to save me. But at that point, I went on medication for depression and anxiety. And at that time, as I say, 23 years old, anxiety, who knew that was even a thing? Because I did not. And that answered, again, so many things to me. Like, I thought this anxiety, or the feeling of anxiety that I was going through, was just a knock-on effect from me experiencing what I'd like since the day my dad died. I just thought that's how I would be for the rest of my life. It was a knock-on effect to that, but really it's not. It's, anxiety's horrible. It's so suffocating, but it's there's ways around to try and control it. So at that point, I went on to medication, and I started to pay. I Googled and did loads of research. I thought, I've got to come out the other end. I can't cope with this feeling anymore. So I went and paid to see a counsellor, and it was literally the best decision I've ever done in my life, and worth every single penny. And I went to see that counsellor every single week for over 1.5 years. I think one of the big things for me is that I probably care too much, and I take on a lot of people's crap, shall we say. And I feel people sometimes take advantage of that. So they will, offload their shit onto me, and then I walk around with their shit on my shoulders. And all it was doing was making me worse. So as my counsellor used to pronounce it, he'd say, you've got a bramble tree, and you just got to snap bramble stick off and give that stick back. So there's a few experiences that have gone on, like a few to-dos with this bloke and my brother. We'd had a bit of a fight, but it caused a lot of rift within the family and so on and so forth. And he's not particularly a very nice man. He's a bully, not a nice man at all. But my counsellor was basically saying, I've got to go and offload it all. So I'm not joking. I literally went and knocked on people's doors. I'm not saying it was easy. There was several times where I'd turn up at a door and I'd have to walk away because I didn't have, the power to do it. But after about 6 months, I did do everything I needed to do. And gradually, bit by bit, I could just feel my body getting lighter, if that makes sense. It was kind of a bizarre feeling, really, because, you don't ever have to be horrible, or you don't need to be rude or anything like that, but you have to always put yourself first before anybody. Even like for me and my daughter, I have to put me first, because if I'm not okay, then I'm not looking after my daughter properly. Do you know what I mean? I need to make sure that my mental health is good, and then my daughter will be perfect. Do you know what I mean? You have to get that mindset, and it's hard to do that, but you have got that. I shout that from the rooftops, because I really think that is so important. And it's not like just because what I've experienced I'm like I know it all, because I don't, because everybody's experience is completely different. But I do think you need to do your own self love, TLC, shall we say, to actually get anywhere in life before you succeed or anything, whatever it is to do with. But it was quite a challenging time, really, but I managed to do it. And I'm not saying I live a complete happy life. I still suffer from anxiety severely, But I know there's lots of different things that I can do to fix that, really. I can listen to relaxation music, I do yoga, even colour, I write stuff down, write like a diary almost. There's loads of different things really that I can do. But it's just about trying to find what works for you, because obviously not everything works for everybody. But yeah, so I still see my counsellor now. I don't see her all the time, but I just go more so just to ramble on, just to kind of offload a little bit sometimes when things are getting a bit too much. Obviously with the whole COVID experience and work wise, it's been quite tough. But just kind of, yeah, I think just trying to stay focused and appreciate what I have, really, because I look at my life now and I have got a lot to be thankful for. My daughter's, she's 2 next month. I've been with my partner for 7 years now. We was meant to get married in May, but COVID ruined the party. So we'll have to rearrange at a later date. I've got a job that I love, and it's now been incorporated with something like with my mental health. And that's just took me to next levels that I never ever expected. Like, we used to have this managing director that was awful, and you mention anything about mental health and he'd either sack you or just tell you to get out your office. And for me, with my experiences, now he's no longer there, thankfully he was removed. I wanted to change. You know, I can't change the world, but even if I can just help one person in my organisation, then I've done something good, you know. And I just want people to feel like if they're in challenging times, that they're not alone. Like, never ever feel that you're alone, because there's, well, millions of people that are going through exactly the same thing, well, however, like, but exactly the same experiences as that what you are, and you'd be really, really surprised by that. I think I was, when I actually started to open up about my experiences, that so many people have said, oh, I suffer with depression, I suffer with anxiety, when I had a miscarriage, and the amount of people that come back and said I had one, I was like, that they were my friend, like I didn't even know that they'd experienced this. And I do think it's just about just talking. Like, that is just the biggest kind of medicine for anybody, I think. Obviously it's a lot more deeper for some people, but just to make that first step to talk. So that's like just one of my main things that I'm trying to do at Reflex. Like, I do it's called an open door session. So every Monday I have me or the other champions, and we go and sit in there for like 3-4 hours, and the door is literally open for anybody to come in and talk. They don't have to have an issue or a mental health problem or anything like that. They can just come in and have a chat to say work's doing my head in, or whatever they want to do. But my purpose of it is just to try and raise as much awareness as I possibly can, and whether that's anxiety, depression, eating disorders, anything. Like, there's, you know, the list for mental health is just ongoing, and it's probably going to get, well, it is, it's peak at the moment, I think, because of the backlog of COVID. But I just want to offer people support and try and bash the stigma of mental health as much as we can, because even though we are so further forward than where we ever was, there is still a really, really horrible dark cloud that overhangs it, and there's still a very, very long journey to go before, you know, we kind of feel that it's all right, like we're in a good position. Then, you know, we need to have a bit more backing. I think more funding needs to be put into it, but it's just more about just knocking the stigma down a bit. And I just want people to reach out, because I just don't want people to experience what I've experienced. You know, I'd probably say I'm probably one of the lucky ones, really, because I've not just sat and in my own self-pity sort of thing. You know, I've done something about it. Like, my brothers, I love them dearly. My oldest one is well, he thinks the world owes him a favour. He's angry, and I try and get the help he wants. He just laughs in my face. He doesn't think he's got anything wrong with him. And, you know, I look at him and I think, you are mental health. Like, you are literally probably one of my biggest fears with him. Like, he just doesn't amount to admit to that he's struggling. He thinks he's okay. And I look at him and I think, I know that you're not. But he's so angry that rather than trying to console people or anything, he's just angry at people. He doesn't communicate properly, or, like I say, just thinks the world owes him a favour. And I've tried for years, since I was 9, to get him help and support, and he doesn't want to know. And I think that's sad. It's people like that I want to try and help, because I think they really need the help more than they actually ever realise. You know, like I say, I can't change the world. It'd be great if I could, but I can't. But I just, you know, if I can share my experience and just raise awareness for it to hopefully stop people going through what I've experienced, then I'd feel like I've done something good.
Do you know what? I just want to say thank you so much for also just breathe. That really came out, didn't it? And like, I don't know if it's my place to say this or not, but I feel like you are definitely a credit to your mum, girl. You are definitely a credit to your mum, and you're like the, you know, when we say about fighters and like fighting back and having that like thing, like despite all the crap that's gone on, like everything that's gone on in your life, like you fought back, you fought to be who you were. That is what courage and everything, that's what it looks like, I think. And I suppose for me, the thing that comes out is that, from what you were saying, is that, you know, we talk about, well, we talk about suicide. We talk about suicide as a very light touch sort of way. And we often focus on people who are vulnerable to suicide and who have taken their lives, or thinking about them, but we don't really think so much about the backlash that it has on family members, people like left behind, and how it affects them. And it's not just like a momentary thing, it literally is affecting them for the whole of their lives, like you've experienced, like I've experienced.
It's like the thing, like with my dad, like I said, we experienced his depression for 5 years, but for anybody outside our family, they didn't have a clue. So, you know, when he was successful, we lost so many friends, because people instantly instigated that my mum must have had an affair, or she must have done something for my dad to have done that. And, you know, for me, like I say, I was 9, and I'm thinking, like, I'm looking at my mum, and I know my mum's not capable of that. She would never in a million years do anything like that. And I thought, you haven't been here. Like, if it wasn't down to my mum, we would have lost my dad years ago. And that just shows like how judgmental people, like these people are, like, we're our close friends. And even like just growing up, like if I was emotional on an anniversary or his birthday or anything like that, I'd have some of my friends be like, why are you crying? I was always made to feel ashamed of it. Do you know what I mean? And I thought, you know, as I've got older, and it's, you know, it's the biggest killer in men under 45. Like, what does that say? And I thought, no, what? Why am I being ashamed? Like, he was my dad. I'm not ashamed of my dad. I'm not ashamed of my dad. I'm not ashamed of what he's done. I'm upset. And yeah, I was very angry. I'm not angry anymore, because I get it. But this just shows like there's just still such a long way to go in terms of mental health. Like, I just think you should never judge a book by its cover, because I know everybody says that now, but it is just so true. Like, you literally never know. Like, I've just shared my story obviously with you guys, but I've just shared it with my work a couple of weeks ago, and I had really good feedback. But there was saying, I've been there for 6-7 years, and people have, you know, they knew that my dad had took his own life, but they just didn't know the concepts of my life. And why should they? They don't need to know that. It's not their fault. But like, they just, obviously with COVID, like giving me a bit of a virtual hug, because they can't actually hug me. But it's just, you know, I don't want people to feel sorry for me or anything like that. I just want to raise awareness. That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I think it needs to be done, like, more.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it boils down to, we were having this conversation before I put the record on, but about feeling uncomfortable talking about it, you know.
Yeah.
And it's on people to actually, God, this doesn't sound harsh, but to get over that uncomfortability, because actually
No, it is. It's true.
That needs to happen. You know, like one of the things that people really struggle with asking is, are you thinking about taking your own life? It's almost like they feel like if they say it, that person can think, you know what, I didn't think about that, but now I will do it, because you've put that thought in my head. The fact is if someone's distressed, they're already distressed. There's not a lot that you can do to change that, or to like make them more distressed, unless you go out of your way. So I suppose,
and at the end of the day, not everyone that's depressed is thinking about killing themselves.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? They're just in a really horrible situation. Some people that go through depression, they've got no intention of ending their life. No intention at all. And I know, like you say, it's not a very nice question to ask, but when I did my mental health training, they push you to say that to people.
Absolutely. In fact, there's a resource out there which I will put on chat, and please do cascade it. It's by Zero Suicide Alliance. It's brilliant. I mean, it is like a digital thing, but it walks you through 3 conversations that you could potentially have. So one with stranger, one with work colleague, and one with a family member. But they show you and they walk you through and they coach you through all the things that you could say, just so that you ask that question and it gives the opportunity for someone to say actually yes or no, and then get the support that they need. That is just so key. And I think it's so relevant right now because we're all hidden away in our homes effectively, and we don't really know, it's that thing of when you're at work and you're in office and stuff, you don't know what goes on behind people's closed doors. Well, they are behind that closed doors now pretty much 24/7. And actually, how do you reach out to them? How do you recognize the signs that maybe someone might be struggling? And ultimately, it's not about having a particular qualification or anything like that. It's literally just having the confidence to reach out. You know what I mean? Folks, I hope you're feeling okay. If you want to ask questions, please feel free to put them on chat. Sarah sends you her hugs and thanks you for sharing. I don't know if you can see the chat or not. And
that's where it is.
It's right at the bottom somewhere, but I'll kind of put them out. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, please do ask. I wanted to ask about is that obviously after sharing your story, what did you see happen in your organization? Like, what were the things that people were saying to you when they were coming to you after hearing your story?
So I had I had a lot of emails more than things, because again, we've got people at home. And my story was that we do a newsletter, so it gets distributed to internal and external. So obviously it was only shared to staff, not all our customers. But I just had a lot of positive, like, people saying thank you, as silly as that may sound. But I had one lady just saying thank you for sharing your story. It really has opened up my eyes to know that people that we sit shoulder to shoulder with can be going through or have been through such painful situations, and we know nothing about it. But even when I introduced the fact that I was going to introduce a mental health package within the company with the pledge, that I had the biggest response to that, more than I was expecting. And that just shows. But even now, then people specifically that have sent me emails like, thank you for introducing this to our company, I always just either ring or I just send an email like, are you okay? Because there's one lady that her son suffers severely with depression and anxiety, and she has to have days here and there to try and obviously help. And she reached out to me and was like, I can't thank you enough. Like, this is just an unbelievable thing to, welcome to our business, and, you're thankful for that. But it kind of like, what's the word? I feel a bit of a cheat, really, because obviously I'm doing it for the reasons that I'm doing it. But, because you get all this thanks, it kind of does boost me. But I think it boosts me because I want to do more. It pushes me to do more. Like, a lot of people have said this sounds awful, I'm in my company, but they think I'm wasted in my job. Like, what? I rent vans out, basically. That's what I do. That's my job, and I can't manage. But I love that. Do you know what I mean? But it's like, one girl wants me to actually work in the NHS, where they offer the support for if they've been through PTSD or anything like that. But I don't know. You never know what's going on in the corner. But it was more, I just want to help, really.
We get that from you. Karen's asked a question. She's wondering how your mum is now and how your mum reacted when you were at your lowest.
So at the time, she almost is. She won't show her emotion, because for me, for that time, I was her priority. Do you know what I mean? I know that sounds awful, but like, she just is. It's hard to explain. Like, my mum, I know my mum suffers deep down, but she is literally like a superhero, because you look at her and just wouldn't even know, because she just gets on. Like, she has that much crap thrown at her, all the time from every angle. And my eldest brother especially, he's 37 years old, he's actually currently living with my mum because he's split up with his old relationship and so on, but he's just so disrespectful. Like, she runs a pub, so she gets people's judgment, that side. It's just, my mum's not in the greatest position at this moment in time, but that's not down to her mental health as such, it's just because of circumstances. But all being well, by January she'll be out of that situation, and she can actually, I'm trying to do it so that she won't have to work again. So I actually live in my mum's house. My mum lives at the pub, and me and my partner have been doing it up so that she can't afford to do it, basically. But so then we can sell the property and she can earn more, so she'll downsize, and then the money left can be her early pension pot. Touch wood. That's my plan. If it can happen, I don't know. But my mum is literally just a superhero. She's got lots of health issues, but you just wouldn't know. She just honestly just carries on. I don't know how she does it, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. Do you know, I hear this a lot, actually, like, where we talk about stigma and automatically we think the stigma is about, you know, and this is what it's defined as, that, you know, we become unacceptable if we share. But a lot of the time people don't share because they want to protect other people, because they don't want to add that extra thing. And I just wonder if that was something that was going on with your mum. Like, obviously she's had to stand up and deal with everything. I can't imagine what she must have gone through to see that, but then to safeguard her kids and then to manage the situation.
I think that's the thing, because even when my dad was here, like, my dad used to, when he was really low, he'd tell my mum, he'd get suitcases out and start packing her clothes in it and telling her to leave with me and my brothers and sisters, because he was a terrible person for putting us through what he was putting us through. That was his mentality, and it made his depression worse, because all he was doing then was beating himself up. And my mum never ever once gave up. Like, there's a song by Lauryn Hill, I think it's called X Factor, but that reminds me so much of my mum. You should listen to it. It's a good song. She just never gives up. It's like, even, as I said, I keep reverting back to my brother. My brother's horrible. I know that sounds awful. I love my brother, but he's selfish. But she never gives up on him, and he continues to take the piss out of her constantly. He's 37 years old and she still has to give him money. He's like a child, honestly. And I get angry at my mum. I'm like, what are you doing? Stop. Like, just, you know, he needs to grow up. And I think because she has this big fear, she just wraps us in cotton wool. And I'm telling her to unwrap us. Like, we're adults now. Do you know what I mean? I'm 31. I'm the baby of the family. And I'm like, stop protecting us. Like, you can't save everybody. And like, she'll say that to me, because I think that kind of gets, you know, we've gone through that whole experience with my dad, and all we wanted to do is save him, and we did save him so many times, but unfortunately, you know, what happened. But like I say to my mum, like, I know they're your sons, they're my brothers, but you can't, you know, follow them around and wrap them up. Like, they've got to be adults. Do you know, I know that sounds awful because I'm trying to raise awareness, but I keep saying to her, like, you can't mommy coddle them, let them be. Like, and I almost feel like sometimes they use that to their advantage, because they know my mum's biggest fear is that they will go off and do what my dad has done. And it has been for me for years, but I've almost had to just dismiss myself from it, because I can't protect them. Do you know what I mean? I can't stop anybody from doing what they will or won't do. I obviously don't want that to happen at all, but you know, for your own mental well-being, all it does, you can't sleep. You literally cannot sleep. You can't switch off. I text my brothers like, where are you? What are you doing? Because it's like they purposely just don't text. And I almost feel like it's because they want to get what they want, and they usually want money. And it's just, I don't know what went wrong with my brother, if I'm being honest, because my other brother is an absolute gem. Like, he's just amazing, absolutely amazing. Whereas my eldest one, I don't know, he's hard work.
Do you know, you probably, this probably happens in all families, like, people deal with things in really different ways, and sometimes some people end up with that, like, raw deal of, you know, not being able to cope or deal with it as perhaps other members of family. I just want to kind of flag, so Ian has just said that he's been where your dad was. Ian is actually going to be speaking at our next webcast on 19th of November, but correct me if I'm wrong. He also says that you were talking about, I think you mentioned that you were cheating or something like that, and he's referencing imposter syndrome and that we all get it and it's all about coping, to be honest. And I'm just kind of like sticking with that actually, because, you know, your story is really powerful, but I can imagine it must be really tough sharing that. And like a lot of champions out there, they're probably making that move to want to share their story, to help people, to raise awareness. But it's a really vulnerable place to put, you know, to kind of spill your guts out, so to speak. So what could you say to them, or what do you think they need to think about when they're sharing their story, especially if they have loads of traumatic things happen to them? How can they share it safely that doesn't be counterproductive for them, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think for me, the older I've got, the more I've learned to not give a shit. And I really think you need to think that way, because at the end of the day, this is your experience. Nobody else that's watching, or, you know, obviously my family have experienced that, but like my partner, he hasn't experienced. This is my story, this is my journey. And even though me and my brothers have all experienced it, we experience it in a different way, because we are our own people, and we'll address it in a different way. We'll look at it in a different way. You know, I've chose to get that help, my brothers didn't. But I don't think there's a right or wrong way of addressing it. It's your story, so you should tell your story how you want to tell it. There's going to be difficult. Like I can openly, now I'm at a position I can openly sit and speak about my dad. I did get a little bit emotional during that time, and I don't really know why, but I think it was just more because I've been really anxious about actually doing this. I think it was just probably it's kind of things get on top of you almost. But it's took me a long time to get to that stage. Do you know what I mean? Like I would sit and speak about, like my dad's name would be mentioned and stuff like that, and I'd start to talk about my experiences, and I'd just be like crying my eyes out because the pain was raw. I think that's okay. I think that's okay to be like that. Like, as I say, it's took me a long time to get to where I am now, and as I say, I'm comfortable with speaking about it. But I think if I'd have sat during that sobbing, I don't think that's an issue either. Like, it's your journey and it's your story to tell, and you should tell your story however the hell you want to tell it.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where I'm going to kind of like put in that sometimes, again, like having spoken to a lot of champions who have shared really traumatic stuff, sometimes they're told to sort of not sugarcoat it, but, you know, like drum it back a bit, like the story, like it's just,
well, they did with me, didn't they? Can you remember when I contacted you because so I'll explain a little bit so the rest of you know, but when I had written my story, I've sent it out to get people's opinions really, but the lady that does our HR, she's training, she's got 1 year left of her course, so we outsource a HR professional, and she basically turned around and said that I was not allowed to share my story because one, it breaches GDPR. Two, we haven't had the training. That I did agree with, because my plan was to do the mental health training and then start the mental health. But because of COVID, shit, like the stuff got ruffled and it didn't go to the plan I'd anticipated it to go to, but that can't be helped. And she was saying that it would trigger people's emotions and that I shouldn't basically be sharing my story. And it kind of disheartened me, but then I like kind of sat and thought about it, and I thought, you know what, no, this is the whole point of why I'm trying to do what I'm trying to do, to raise awareness, and you're shutting me down straight away. So I spoke to my boss, and all I need is my boss's backings. I don't care what anyone else in business says. As long as I've got my boss's backing, then I'll do what I can do. So I said, what we'll do, we'll book the training, and then literally the day after, so we did the training Tuesday, Wednesday, and on the Thursday, my story was released. And I didn't tell HR this was happening. And they didn't say a bean. And I told my boss, if someone's got a problem, they can come to me and say it. Why should I be made yet again to feel ashamed of my experience? It's my experience, not breach of GDPR. I mentioned no names in my story, and it's my family. It's my journey. Like, if you want me to get my brothers and my mum to sign a piece of paper, then I'll crack on. I can't get my dad's because he's dead. I can't get my aunties and my uncle because they're all dead. But how is that a breach of GDPR? It's not. And I've just thought, you, as somebody in HR that's going through different companies, should be ashamed of himself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm going to comment on that, but basically, it's that thing about the validity of it, isn't it? It's like, what you're taking away from my experience. Like, is it too much? Am I too much? I mean, this is something that a lot of people struggle with when they're struggling with their mental health
Yeah.
anyway. They feel like they're too much, their emotions are too much, what they're feeling is too much. How it's manifesting physically is too much. And sometimes being told to kind of like take it back a bit and make it easier for someone else is almost like saying, well, you know what, you take yourself back a bit so that we can stomach you, you know.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's where the thing is really. Ian wanted to share something.
Can I just say something, Runa?
Go for it, Ian.
Yeah. Now, Charlotte, I was one of the Pledge alumni, so I was one of the first workplace champions recruited in England. So I've been a workplace champion for over 5 years now. And I've been working on mental health awareness since 2013, really. I mean, I'll tell more of my story later on, but my experience of trying to raise awareness within companies is that it's very easy to feel frustrated, but that is pretty toxic for yourself to carry around. Because one thing you have to remember is not everybody is in the same place that we are.
No, yeah, I agree.
And to move it forward, it's a war of attrition, it's trench warfare, right?
Yeah.
Very rarely do you win a war or a battle with one single lunge. So don't try and do a single lunge. What I've done in the past is I've moved it forward incrementally on a large front. So that means recruiting others. That means empowering others. That means getting other people interested and looking for the small steps, because they all add up eventually. So when you get a blocker like a HR person saying stuff like that, what is it? The Art of War by Sun Tzu. He said, if you have an enemy that's that you are greater than, fight them. If you're on equal terms, fight them. If they are greater than you, just irritate them. So what I've done is I've gone through a back door sort of thing, the way you kind of have.
Yeah.
But the main thing is you need to try and take people with you and not try and
No, I get that. And as when my story was released,
for resentment, you don't want any resentment.
Yeah.
Just take people forward.
Yeah.
And if you meet a blocker, leave it for a little while.
Yeah.
Then come back to it, and then you'll find somebody's moved on, or you know, and you can get it done that way. Because you're in this weird game, Charlotte. We're in it for the long game, aren't we?
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. But let's say, to be fair, my boss backs everything. But my boss owns a percentage of Reflex, so she's like a shareholder. She's on our board, so I can't get any higher if to say of somebody accept what I've got to do. Do you know what I mean? And that's why I say, as long as I've got my boss's backing, I will do whatever I can to do in that business. And even with the like my HR, she's fine. She's actually a champion, but it's the lady that's offering assistance that was the issue. But like I say, the story was released and nobody said anything other than positive. And that's what I wanted. And we put a trigger warning on, and you had to actually click like a PDF to read my story. So I sent an email out and said, I'm not doing this for people to feel sorry. I don't want people to feel uncomfortable. You do not have to read it. They don't. I'm sure there's quite a few people at Reflex that didn't read that, and it's fine. That's fine. But it is like I'm asking other employees to come forward with their stories, and I've already had 2 people that have said they will share their experiences, and that for me is great, because you know, people are willing to talk and share their own experiences, and that's really what I wanted to gain from my story. Do you know?
That's a good way forward, because one of the things that I mean, in many ways, I'm glad we've had this conversation, because it's going to help inform my talk when I do it in November. The one thing my journey started within Highways England, about 6,000 people, right?
Yeah.
There's maintaining the roads network. Don't talk to me about road cones because I'm not interested.
Well, just to change the subject, Highways England are actually doing a massive mental health thing. But sorry, Runa, but they're doing it with Calm at the moment.
I know.
Quite a good thing, just because there's that many blokes, shall we say, mainly men, that are in vans alone. So they need to be looked after.
It started off with my story, and what you have to do is you have to get it to a place where you almost hand it off to other people. I very rarely write stories on our portal now and talk about my experience, but there's so much on the portal about mental health, because what you do is you hand it over to others. Because there is one danger, and the danger is if the same story keeps coming out the same mouth, people will switch off. They need to hear it from different people. And I started to invite people to guest write on my portal blog.
Yeah.
And I did have one particular one. It was called Be a Man, and it was about men in the construction industry and how they're at risk of high risk of suicide and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And my corporate communications didn't want to publish it, so I stuck it on LinkedIn instead. And it went on LinkedIn and it went viral. So it went all over the world. I had people respond to me from Australia, lots from the Middle East. I was really shocked. Loads from the Middle East, Russia, Australia, America, New Zealand, worldwide. So anyway, that's enough from me, Rowan. Otherwise, I'll.
I was going to say, you can't give the plot away. Like next month you're on, but no, thank you for sharing that, to be honest. Charlie, because we're conscious of time, and I did want to get this question in from Karen. So Karen, do you want to come on and just ask the question directly?
Sure. So I lost a friend of mine in February, and she was bipolar, and she had tried to take her own life a few times with like overdoses, but she never did it seriously. Like, she knew what doses she was taking, enough to sort of like knock herself out and have the attention, but without actually dying. And in February, it was really sad because she posted something on Facebook apologizing to everybody for, you know, being so rubbish and everything. And we were just like, oh, something's not right. But then is that another, like, one of her cries for help? And so some of the family kind of ignored it. And then when nobody had heard from her by about 5 a.m, they'd gone to her house. And by the time the police had got the door kicked in and everything, it was just too late. And the first thing she said when they came in the door was, get me to the hospital. But she was too far gone. The lithium had got her, and she died. And she had an 8-year-old son. And she was only like 38. I find it really difficult, actually. And what's hard is she'd left her husband at Christmas, where she was on a manic sort of phase, moved in with this man that she had no intention of really being with. And the husband's been amazing, and he's kind of blanked out that last kind of like month of her life, and he's doing everything for son, so that son remembers mum as mum was. You know, that she was just unwell, which is brilliant. So we all just talked to her, and to him, you know, about her as she was, not as she ended up. If that kind of made sense. But we still got an 8-year-old boy without his mum, and he's got a family, and you've still got him who's, you're trying to bring him up. So I kind of want to know, you know, because you can't keep saying the same things over and over, like, you know, and they're going to move on with their life, but she's always going to be very much part of it because he wants her to be remembered. I just kind of wondered what else we could kind of, you know, do in a positive way to kind of, I don't know, just help them maybe, because a lot of people don't know what to say, so they stop talking or they stop asking. And once you've got the funeral, and we went into COVID, so there wasn't, you know, the funeral was literally, I think it was about 8 of them, it was their family, there wasn't, you know, it's that real kick-off time. So there's been no, and it's just really difficult. I mean, they're in Wales, so they're way away from us. So, you know, I haven't been able to see them since it's happened or anything. So I talk every now and again, but I was really close with her, not so much with the, you know, the husband, you know. So it's just hard. So just kind of wondered what, you know, you would have liked for you, like growing up, and different, how we can help, dad
Yeah.
and son, you know.
So there was, I could probably bore you to death here with loads of different things, because my mum was brilliant. Like, she really was brilliant. So when my dad first passed away, sounds daft, but she got me 2 books, and there was one called The Hideaway. It's more of a grown-up book, should we say, but it's about a boy that loses his mum. I think she died in a car crash. But it's called The Hideaway. But I used to read that all the time. And then there's another one which is more, it's not cartoony, but it's got a lot of pictures in. You can get it on Amazon, because I recently bought it actually again, but it's called Badger's Parting Gifts. But again, it's about bereavement. But as a child, when you're, rather than shoving conversation, and it's like verbal diarrhea, like, are you okay? Because, you know, because I'd found my dad, everyone was almost suffocating me all the time. Like, if I didn't cry, they'd be like, "What, do you need to get upset?" I'm like, what? Like, and I hated the fact, because he is 8, I was 9, I hated the fact that people used to treat me like a child. And even today, like, my brothers would be like, well, you're only 9, you don't really remember it. Yes, I do. I remember everything about my childhood, because my childhood was my dad, and my dad's not here. So I think about them childhood memories every single day, so they don't disappear from my head. Do you know what I mean? And I was not, yes, I was a child, but to me, I lived that more than anybody else. Do you know what I mean? I was the one that sat there and I saw my dad, and I hated it when people used to talk down to me like I was just this little child and I didn't know what was going on. I hated that. So that's just my opinion. I don't know whether he feels the same. But we also I used to love sitting in my garden at night time with my mum, and we'd find the brightest star in the sky, and that was my daddy's star. I used to love doing that. So silly things like that. On his birthday, so his birthday was actually this week, 13th of October. But we'd always get candles, or we'd put balloons and we'd write little notes on the balloons. But we did that if we was just having a sad day. Sometimes when we'd go and get a helium balloon, and we'd write a little note what we wanted to say, and we'd, you know, fly it up in the sky so it'd reach my dad. And that's how I used to perceive it.
But how do you want others to be towards you? Because I just talk to them as normal, as, you know, not as if nothing's happened, but like as if I've never, you know, like never meeting you, like, you know, just talk as normal.
I want
to be treated as normal, or would you want to be reminded and asked, like, you know, how are you doing? Or would you rather just people didn't do that?
No, I didn't mind it if people asked me. I didn't mind if I asked if people were, if I was okay. The biggest thing that helped me growing up, and I got this because I used to go, it's a charity in Leicester actually called the Laura Centre, but it was based on a little girl that died, and then the mum and dad set it up, so it's a bereavement counselling thing. And I went to that for about a year after my dad passed away. So that was quite nice, because they put me with groups of children that had lost their parents to suicide. So I didn't feel like it was just me.
Yeah.
That really did help. If you can maybe see if there's any organisations around near where he's living, that might help. It might not. Like, as I say, me and both brothers went to one session. My brothers didn't like it, but I stayed. I carried on going and seeing them for a year. But the biggest thing that helped me is I used to have a diary. I've still got every single one upstairs somewhere in boxes, but I just, not every day, but I just write down how I was feeling, or, you know, just say things like what I'd done that day. But I didn't want, what I hated is, you know, like, when people are awkward, like, it made me awkward, because people, especially back then, like 1999, it was majorly a massive taboo subject, and people just didn't know what to say. Like, we'd walk to the shop, and people that were our friends, you'd see them, and they would literally cross the street, and it made me feel like we were just nothing. Like, and that's another reason why I suppose I started to dislike him, and I hated my dad, because I was like, you've turned people against us. And I think now, for your friend's little boys, this sounds awful, but I think he's in a better position because of how far mental health has come, that hopefully people won't treat him like that. But I think it's absolutely fine to say he's okay. But I liked, just in brief conversation, when people would bring my dad up and be like, oh, do you remember when you did that? Do you remember when we went there? I love them stories.
Yeah.
It's like, now, if I meet anybody that knows my dad, I almost like cling to them, because I'm like, oh, tell me something about my dad.
Yeah, I'll get you.
So I think even though now he'll be thankful for you, but I think as he gets older as well, them stories will probably be even more special as he gets older.
Okay, thank you.
You could even do like a scrapbook. I don't know how artistic you are, but you could even
no, don't go there.
like almost like just a memory book, because we did do one of them. Yeah. But we did like just obviously happy memories, like from when he was born to now, something that he can keep. Like my mum never took photos of my dad, even when she eventually got a new relationship. There's pictures of my dad everywhere, and they will stay there.
Yeah, we've done that actually quite a lot. We've done a lot of photos and stuff, so
yeah,
you know, and we do talk about her a lot, and he talks about her a lot, and everybody, you know, and it's always very positive. But
yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it's just, you know, it's tough. And dad goes out, he's a delivery driver, and so the little lad goes to live with his auntie, like his mum's sister, while he's, you know, during the week when he's at work, and then he goes back home to dad at the weekend. So his whole life's just completely upside down at the moment. And you know, it's still the first year, we're still in the first sort of 6 months, so
I think the first year is always the hardest.
Yeah,
I think as well, you just remind him that it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
I think that's such a big thing. I don't think it really matters how old a person is to be told that that should be told. Because I think sometimes, like, it's hard to deal with certain situations, and people do deal with them differently, and it's fine. But I think you also need, especially for him being 8, he needs the reassurance that it's okay. Like if he wakes up this morning and he's emotional because he's missing his mum, that's fine. Yeah,
and sometimes they are like that, and sometimes dad will post something on Facebook and everyone just goes, oh, sending you a hug, and you go, it seems so lame. Like you want to be able to do more or say more, and there isn't anything else you can. I usually make a joke because that's just me, you know, and it works, but you know, it's not always. I don't know, I just wondered kind of where, you know, how obviously has it affected you, how it, in sometimes people respond differently, and you wouldn't want that for somebody else. So it's just interesting to, you know, hear how you felt about it. And I am very sorry for all of your losses, because it sounds like you've had a really horrible time, but well done you for coming out the other side.
Thank you. Thanks.
Folks, we've actually gone over time, so really gutted about this. Like, wish we had more before the Zoom room kicks us out. But yeah, just want to echo what Karen just said. Thank you so much for sharing. Like, honestly, this has been super powerful, super heartbreaking, and you are bloody amazing. Charles, you are bloody amazing, and everyone who knows you is bloody lucky to know you. So folks, for those of you who might be listening outside of this session or anything like that, please, if there is anything that's affecting you, like, do talk about it. If you need to talk, there's always someone out there that's willing to listen. Just find that right person, whether that's family, friend, or you know, one of the support services that you can find on a Time to Change's website. But please do. I've also put in the chat the link to the Zero Alliance suicide training, which is a free digital training. I will actually put that on the description when I send the YouTube video out. It's an audio recording, but you'll be able to have access to that. And yeah, thank you all for joining us today, your contributions and everything like that. Like, honestly, I find these webcasts so heartbreaking, but also so inspiring. I cannot be like ordinary people living such extraordinary stuff. It's mind-blowing. So people, carry on being amazing. And Ian, we'll see you next time around. Hopefully you can all join us on that session. We will hear definitely about the amazing things that Highway have been doing and he's been doing with them. And yeah, just take care of yourself. Yeah, lots of TLC and whatever that entails. You all. If it's just